Greetings friends, Dragon here again. 1966's Come Drink With Me, or in Cantonese, Dai Joy Ha. Directed by King Hu and starring the incredible Cheng Pei Pei, who, if you haven't seen this movie but you have seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, she returns as Jade Fox, as the kind of the villainous Jade Fox in that movie. But here she is at a mere 20 years old when she was a contract actor working under Shaw's and handpicked by director King Hu to star in this. She plays Golden Swallow. I want to make this a non-spoiler review because if you haven't seen it, the story's really good and it's well worth tracking down. It's hard anytime you start reading about this movie, or if you listen to any of the special features on any of the versions that are out there, you will be repeatedly reminded of just how seminal, just how influential this film is, and it is kind of hard to understate. The fact that this is still sort of flying under the radar on the 88 Films site, and by that I mean it's not sold out instantly when it probably should have done. So it's still available on there with a slipcase. A beautiful slipcase with it's not Kung Fu Bob art. This is, I'm not too sure who did this. I think this is actually one of the original Hong Kong posters that they've just pulled back. This is closer to the Celestial version cover, which I have here. So the original Celestial DVD that came out in the early 2000s was this one. So we'll, instead of doing a full super in-depth spoiler review, we'll kind of more cover the releases. I'm going to talk a little bit about the film though. So the basic premise is Cheng Pei Pei's character Golden Swallow is on a mission to try and rescue her kidnapped brother. We see her brother being kidnapped at the beginning of the movie by the villainous Chan Hua Lit, playing the jade-faced tiger. And her quest to try and get him back. Along the way she meets another hero, played here by Yue Hua, not to be confused with Yun Hua. So Yun Hua, cigar-smoking villain in Dragons Forever, one of Jackie's 7 Little Fortunes or 7 Lucky Stars troupe. Also the landlord in Kung Fu Hustle. Everybody must know Yun Hua, but no, this is Yue Hua. Same surname, different first name. And he is playing a character called Fan Dai Pei, or Drunken Cat, and very much a prototype character for the sort of figure we would later see in a bunch of Kung Fu movies, most famously in Drunken Master. So the character that Simon Yun plays in Drunken Master, or Yun Su Tin to give him his Chinese name, has its origins here. And in fact, Simon Yun himself is also in this movie. He plays one of the henchmen of Jade-Faced Tiger. But a little bit of a blink in it and you'll miss him cameo, and he's quite a bit younger because Drunken Master obviously came along 12 years later. So the father of Yun Wu-ping appears here, though not on choreography duties, he's just on acting duties. There's also a very, very young Mars, who you'll recognise from the Jackie Chan movies, playing a child part. A lot of places mistakenly say that Jackie himself is in this movie. He is apparently not. I can confirm that, and we'll talk about how I can confirm that in a little minute. But anyway, the 88 Films package is glorious. It looks incredible. The remaster of what was already the remastered DVD image is spectacular. There's a lot of sequences that are shot at nighttime in this, or shot on the Shaw Brothers backlot and made to look like night, which they look convincingly so. One of the strong points of this movie is how incredible the cinematography is. This really set the tone for how the Shaw's movies would kind of look, particularly how their in-house or backlot shot stuff would look. There's a really nice mix of location footage, some great shots that if somebody's earned their money and gone out at the crack of dawn and got a sunrise shot, which the use of these very selected outside shots mixed in with all of the stuff that's shot in the back lot is really, really effective. So it kind of makes the film feel much more expansive than a lot of the Shaw's movies that came after it, actually. But it really set the tone. And the cinematographer here was actually a Japanese cinematographer called Tadashi Nishimoto, who also shot, for Bruce Lee, shot Way of the Dragon, and posthumously shot Game of Death. Also shot Super Inframan for Shaw's, and before he decamped to China from Japan, he shot the incredible Ghost Story of Yotsuya in 1959 and Black Cat Mansion in 1958, both which are really visually rich, and he brings a very Japanese aesthetic. King Hu often gets described as being kind of China's answer to Kurosawa, and never more so here. You can see an awful lot of parallels between some of the Kurosawa samurai movies and this, and particularly if you're a fan of certainly some of the female starring Japanese movies, particularly the Lady Snowblood films, there's a lot of fun to be had here. She's not playing a character that's so much out for revenge as really out on a more heroic aspirations to try and rescue her brother, but there's a lot of parallels, and certainly the central figure that we have, played by Ching Ping-pei, is every bit as powerful and as mesmerising as Miko Kaji's character in Lady Snowblood. So yeah, if you like those movies and you haven't seen this, that alone should hopefully kind of make you want to try and track it down. Set during the Ming Dynasty, so another kind of really beautiful period piece. This one has weather playing much more of an element than we normally see in Shaw's movies. There's a really good use of rain, which you see a lot in the Japanese movies, but rarely seem to see in the Shaw's backlot. I don't know if because they were filming so much, it's probably quite a lot of hassle to soak the entire backlot, because then everything else that they're shooting has to also be shot during rain, so they didn't seem to do it that much. I think the only two that jump out at me is really this and Legend of the Fox, which came a lot later, and they both have really great sequences shot in the rain. This one's, I think, better than the one that you see in Legend of the Fox, which came quite a lot later, which is just used as a device for why people have to take shelter in one particular building. Here you really get some pretty good sequences played out in the rain. And he also, his lighting, Tadashi Nishimoto's lighting of representing weather, so particularly the way that he's kind of using some sort of flashes of blue and kind of those arc strobes that you would see a lot in Hollywood movies, is great. So you kind of see thunder clapping in the background, gives things an awful lot more atmosphere, and particularly kind of makes you forget that you're looking at something that's been shot on a soundstage. And how much of it they've managed to dress and make look at night is incredible here. And there's some tremendous action sequences, particularly ones when you see Ching Pei-pei kind of facing off against really large groups of protagonists, but it's all handled really believably. Like she is able to hold her own through her skill as a swordswoman, and it's just really good. I think it'll feel very familiar if you've seen really any kung fu movies from the 70s or the 80s, but it all kind of started here. Really, a lot of the tone for the films visually and also in the way that they choreographed and staged the action really started here. So it's hard to kind of undervalue how much importance this movie had for really setting the tone for what would follow. And the fact that her background was as a dancer really is what helps give the action sequences much more of a kind of choreographed dancing flow that we'd see a lot in later Shaw's movies. So less martial artsy and more, I guess, more opera inspired. Speak a little bit about the disc. I mentioned it before, the transfer is really good. There are slightly different extras between the two. We get a really good commentary on the 88 film's release from the, I think, kind of film critic, film historian. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her surname, but I think it's Sam Dakin, an American film critic who does a really good job of kind of placing this film in context in kind of Hong Kong cinema history and also in world cinema history. Really, she draws a lot of parallels to the Western movies that are coming out at the same sort of time. It's a really good commentary. It's kind of very much coming from more of a critical studies kind of look at the movie, which is no bad thing. And she's really well informed, and she makes references to a whole bunch of other shows, some I'd seen and some I haven't. So I got a great kind of watch list of stuff to find just from listening through to her commentary track. It's amazing. It's really good. That's the main extra that's on here. The other big one for me was the fact that you get both language options. You get the English dub, and for these era movies that was always really good fun, as well as the original Mandarin. This was shot in Mandarin rather than Cantonese. Comparing it to the old original Celestial DVD, the one extra I wish had ported across is the commentary track that was on this one, and these hardly ever have commentary tracks. I think of the Hong Kong releases, there's only 4 that I know of. If anyone knows differently, please correct me, but there's 4 of them that have commentaries. I think this, oh god, I'm not going to remember all 4 off the top of my head. I'll do another video on that later on if anyone's interested to know, because the commentaries were done by Bay Logan, who did all the Hong Kong Legends commentaries and some of the early 88 films releases. And this one's really notable for the fact that he sits down with Ching Pei-pei, and her recollection of what was going on at the time is phenomenal. She constantly kind of corrects him of kind of any misconceptions that he had about other actors, and clears up stories, speaks a lot about the overall circumstances that she was going through in terms of the relationship with Shaw's and Shaw's relationship with King Hu as a director, and how much they were in some ways trying to restrain some of his grander ideas. And I'm not too surprised that he went off and made Touch of Zen and Dragon Gate outside of Shaw's, because I think they were probably trying to limit the scope of what he was trying to do. Certainly, but I suspect they probably tried to keep his running time down, because this one's an hour and a half, and I think Touch of Zen's got 3 hours. So I don't think there's any Shaw's movies that run that long, because Shaw's owned the movie theatres that they showed their films in, and much like the studios of today, they wanted to screen their movies as much as they possibly could, so they were pretty strict about running times. And certainly pretty strict about what they would and wouldn't let their actors do. So The character that Ching Pei Pei plays in this, I believe, was supposed to be a central part of the Dragon Gate movie, but she wasn't allowed to leave Shaw's. There is another film that always mistakenly gets called a sequel to this, just called Golden Swallow. It's not, it's a totally different story. It just happens to have Ching Pei Pei in it, and she was really popular because of this movie, so they just tried to kind of play off the success of this and called the other movie Golden Swallow, but it's really only Golden Swallow in name. It's not really a direct sequel. The other thing that's worth mentioning, if we kind of come back to our tremendous character, Drunken Cat, so Yu Hua's character, he has a really half beggar soul sort of feel of kind of really being a very skilled martial artist who's drunk all the time, but there's also shades of monkey to him. There's a kind of Wukongish element to how he kind of carries himself, and I think an awful lot of that you can see paralleled in the Japanese monkey series that would come an awful lot later. But unsurprisingly, he did play Monkey in another movie that came out in the same year, so 1966, Monkey Goes West, and this is him here. So he's playing the titular monkey in this movie here, and I think because they came out at the same sort of time, you can see shades of his performance in this and vice versa. Though he's much more exaggerated as a monkey in this one, obviously, but a lot of the same sort of humour, grace and playfulness that you kind of associate with that character you can see here. So yeah, he's amazing. It's kind of really a bit of a double act. At certain points in the film, the narrative shifts slightly and takes he's driving the story, but for the first hour it's all Ching Pei Pei's story, and it's tremendous to watch. So I think I'm trying to hold back a little bit on telling you too much more about the story itself. I would just absolutely encourage you to try and track down a copy. It's certainly still available on the website and is well worth getting. If you like any Kung Fu movies, not just if you like Shaw's, if you're a fan of Drunken Master, you deserve to kind of see where an awful lot of the origins of the beggar soul character started. If you're a fan of Japanese cinema, you'll love this too. It feels a lot bigger in scope than an awful lot of the Shaw's movies that came later. Quentin Tarantino was supposed to remake this. I think they announced in 2007 that Miramax was going to do a remake and Tarantino was going to direct it, and that never materialised. But anything that gets the Tarantino seal of approval is usually a pretty good sign. That man has good taste in movies. That is us for today. Thanks very much for watching. Click like and subscribe if you don't already, and see you again tomorrow for another vid. Take care. Cheers.